What's up? I'm the kind assassin, and yesterday I saw episode 6 of Ahsoka. And unlike the last two episodes where I waited a long time to watch them, I watched this one as soon as it came out because I was so excited to see what was going to happen. So I'll just go through the episode from beginning to end and share my thoughts. Now, the very first opening scene, again, the show's doing such a good job with the visuals. They showed the space whales like going through like hyperspace or their hyperspeed. And it was just really beautiful. There was like rainbow lights in the back. And then when Morgan, Balin, and Shin Hati arrived at the planet, that entrance, or I guess I should say exit from hyperspeed was actually pretty cool too, just the visual there. Now, something Balin said is worrying me because he said that this is the planet that the whales come to die. It's a graveyard.
The whales came here to die. Iridia is a graveyard.
So now I'm worried that the space whales that are with Ahsoka are going to just like drop them off and then they're just going to die. So I hope that doesn't happen because, they're beautiful creatures. So this episode really had a lot going on. A lot happened, a lot of reveals, and it was just one of the most solid episodes, I think, of the whole series so far. So after Balin and team got to the planet, they went to the temple-looking area and were met by three witches. And apparently Morgan and the three witches are communicating like telepathically or something, or through some kind of power that they have.
You heard our call to you in the dream.
Your visions guided me across the stars.
And those three witches reminded me of the three witches from Macbeth in a way.
Double, toil and trouble.
So I was just wondering whether maybe the writers were inspired by that play or just were influenced a little bit by that play. But these three witches, I'm a fan. I love their costume design, their makeup, their voices, their power, all of it. So I'm a big fan of the witches. Anyway, so the witches talk to Morgan and, they're like, okay, Thrawn's going to be here, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, oh, okay, they're going to reveal Thrawn in this episode finally. So I was really excited and looking forward to that. I thought it was really interesting that the witches like sensed the Jedi power in Sabine, but didn't sense it in Balin and Shin Hati, even though they have like force powers.
It reeks of Jedi.
It is dangerous.
And they immediately were like, no, like get this girl out of here. And they sent her to that prison. So once the series is over, I'm going to geek out and go read as much as I can about what's going on between witches and Jedi, like they're enemies or something like that. I don't know, but I want to learn more about that. Now, after, this introduction or this meeting between the witches and the bad guys and Sabine being locked up, Balin shares a little bit more about his motivations. Shin Hati is really excited about Thrawn coming back and kind of retaking power for the Empire. And Balin, kind of like I had mentioned previously, he's just beleaguered and just cynical about it. He's like, you know what? One group of people come to power and then another group comes and takes over. And then it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like power is just exchanged. And that's just the way it is.
Fall of the Jedi, rise of the Empire. It repeats again and again and again.
And he's not really interested in that. And he said he's interested in the beginning.
What I seek is the beginning. So I may finally bring this cycle to an end.
And then later in the episode, they have another conversation and he kind of says the same thing. He's like, this is where it all started, this planet or this part of the galaxy. And he's like, can't you feel the power? Can't you feel it? And so I was just confused because the whole series, he's very skeptical of Morgan's powers. And now he's really intrigued by what this planet holds. Although maybe now that I think of it, he maybe was envious of her powers and wants that versus not believing in it, which is what I thought originally. So that could be it. He's a has Jedi powers. He was a Jedi. I think he was at some temple that got destroyed, and he probably sees that this Jedi power, this force, is fragile, has weak points in it, and maybe he thinks that witch power is greater than that and it's flawless or something, and he wants it. I don't know. But anyway, so even though it's still a little bit murky, Balin's motivations are coming out more, which is what I'm really interested in the most of all of the characters, other than Thrawn, because I've been looking forward to meeting him. And so finally Thrawn makes his entrance, and I was just like, my eyes were wide open. I was smiling. I was so excited watching this scene. The Star Destroyer kind of coming and just like the enormity of it, right? Just overpowering the entire frame, overpowering and dwarfing everybody that was on that temple, dwarfing the temple itself. It just really instilled this immense power that is coming forward finally. And then all the stormtroopers, or the army, like, I didn't know there was all this huge army. I thought it was just Thrawn and Ezra that were banished, but he has this whole army, and his one like captain guy, his helmet mask thing was really cool and reminds me a little bit of masks from like Greek theater, like way back in like ancient Greek times. Kind of reminded me of the styling of those. So just very interesting and intricate costume work. And then finally you see Thrawn like walking through the troops, and I was just like, there he is. I was really excited to see him. And he finally kind of walks up and he's talking to everybody. Now, all I know of Thrawn are like the cartoon drawings or comic drawings or whatever, like, fan art or just illustrations, right? They're not actual human people like that act as him. And all of his renditions have a very certain look. And when I saw Thrawn, or the actor playing Thrawn, I was like, oh, very different from what I was expecting. He reminded me a little bit of General Tarkin from like the first movies, like episodes 4 through 6, which makes sense. They've been around, done a lot. They're older guys, so makes sense that they're not like these young, like buff guys. But it was just different than what I was expecting. But I was excited to see him finally. And he's just very in control, kind of level-headed, very sure of himself, and commanding, right? Like everyone is like, oh shit, this is Thrawn. Like, I'm going to bow down to him and do whatever he says. So he commands a lot of power. Anyway, so that was a very exciting moment for me. I was really happy to see him, even though I don't know anything about him. I was still excited because they built him up so much. And again, I like bad guys. So anyways, after he's introduced, he talks to Sabine, and he's like, I'm going to honor Balin's promise and let you go find Ezra. I'll give you a horse and tell you what his coordinates are. And
You shall have provisions, a mount, and our latest intel on Bridges' whereabouts.
I'm a little confused by this because who cares about keeping promises, right? From what I hear, Sabine beat him before, so why wouldn't he just kill her right then and there, right? Like, just end it, get rid of this pest, and continue with his plan. So obviously, if he did that, then the story would end in some way. So you have to keep the character alive to keep the story going. But this is what happens in writing. You have to keep the story going and you have to keep characters alive. He's like, yeah, go find him. And then, everyone's like, why are you letting her go? Why are you keeping her promise? Shin Hati's like, what the hell? But he's like, well, she can help us. I guess he's like, he'll find Ezra and then we'll like kill both of them.
Sabine Wren will have the opportunity of finding Ezra Bridger. And if she does, you and your master will destroy them both.
But again, if all of this time Thrawn has been fine, like Ezra's been gone, he's like somewhere else on the planet, and Thrawn is fine, like he could just leave and leave them there. And like, I don't know, it just seems like allowing Sabine to find Ezra in order to kill them both as his plan just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, because they don't really have to go through all that and waste all the time. He could just peace out. But whatever, it is what it is. That's what's happening in the show. It was funny, I had another like Eivor moment when Sabine was leaving the temple on that horse dog wolf looking thing. It just is similar to the way mounts in Valhalla like run, and then she was like exiting, and there was like this long shot of her exiting, and it just reminded me of Eivor. Like, oh, another Eivor reference. It's funny. So Sabine has been on my shit list a little bit since the beginning, and even more now because she was yelling at that horse dog wolf thing after it took off when she was attacked by the bandits or those guys, right?
You abandoned me! Should have known you were a coward.
But it's like, hello, how is it gonna fight? Like, it's not gonna fight. What do you expect it to, like, pull out a lightsaber and start dueling with these guys? Like, come on. Of course it's gonna run away. So she was yelling at it, and it was sad, and I'm just like, ugh, Sabine. So then, Sabine is going, the dog, wolf, horse thing uses his sense of smell to, like, find this area, and she's like, oh, you were just thirsty.
You were thirsty. Is that it?
But it turns out there's a bunch of, like, hermit crab-looking things, and when it stood up, I was like, oh my God, it has clothes. Like, it was so funny looking. It was silly but cute. And, they can't communicate. They speak different languages, but the hermit crab thing saw Sabine's armor with the symbol on it. And he's like, oh, look, I have this thing. And they're like, oh my God, like, we sort of know each other. We know Ezra. So they all went to their, like, village thing. And sure enough, there he was, Ezra. And their conversation, Sabine and Ezra, was like they had just seen each other like a few weeks ago. And I just didn't understand why they were so casual about it and like joking. And I don't know. Obviously, I don't know their relationship. I don't know these characters. I don't know how they were in Clone Wars and Rebels. And I have no context for their interactions. But it seems like this meeting and this reunion is bigger than two friends finally seeing each other after a few weeks, because he was banished for a long time. Like, Sabine didn't even know if he was alive, never even thought that she'd be able to get there because it's like so far away. And Thrawn is alive, and there just seems to be no urgency in her telling him or him asking more probing questions.
How did you get here?
Let's not talk about that. Not right now.
Right, like, I think he did ask, like, how did you get here? How did you find me? And she's like, oh, I'll tell you later. It's like, no. This is serious. It's impossible for you to have gotten here. How did you get here? And Sabine, hello, you literally looked right at Thrawn and were talking to him. And you know what's going to happen. Like, you saw that they're preparing to leave. Like, why? But again, this is just part of how writing is, right? Like, characters in shows, they don't just say what the audience already knows, right? For whatever reason, it's like part of storytelling, I guess. But anyways, I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this is such a monumental moment, and they're just like joking and being casual about it.
Molly, you in danger, girl.
And they're not trying to hurry up and get back there to stop Thrawn. But whatever. That's how it ended, I think. I don't remember if there was anything else happening after that scene. All in all, I did really enjoy this episode. There was a lot happening, and it also felt like, as a normal Star Wars fan, I was able to really understand everything, get into it. It felt like kind of self-contained compared to the rest of the series so far, where not all of, but most of what was happening really connected to the prior storylines. And this episode felt like it was its own thing, kind of like The Mandalorian, or even Rogue One, or Andor, right? You didn't really have to know a lot about other things in the world, I don't think. But Ahsoka, for the first 5 episodes, really did feel like it was a literal continuation of all of the other things, while this one episode, episode 6, felt self-contained and it was its own story. And that's why I think I was really into it. I understood everything. And maybe also there's just a lot of stakes happening. There's a lot of things being revealed. And it was just every single moment of it, there was something happening, versus other episodes, it was a little bit slower. All in all, really excited kind of back into this series, and only 2 episodes left. So I'm really curious to see, like, do they escape? Does Thrawn leave? Probably not, right? Because he's not in any other, like, they don't talk about him in other things, like episodes, 7 through 9 of the Star Wars movies or other shows. So maybe they do defeat him in the next 2 episodes, which would be a shame because I would love to see more of him. Or maybe they don't escape that planet and there's a whole, like, mini universe there. There's a bunch of stories that happen there. I'm really excited to see episode 7. I'll be back next week to talk about it. And thanks for watching. All right, peace.